Hi, this is Janet Gowan welcoming you to Love Letters Live. Today's guest is somebody you may have met before quite a while ago, Larry Strauss. And Larry, I'm going to go right to you to say hello and tell us a little bit about you. And, obviously you stand on your own for your accomplishments, but you did get some very lucky genetics, right?
I, I guess.
So
Um,
I know that's always kind of, but you did. And since I have always heard that teaching is 90% entertainment, you can talk about that because if it doesn't grip you, you're not going to pay attention. So
I,
you
yeah,
say hello and you start in about you.
yeah, well, yeah. And one of the first things I noticed about teaching was how easily children are bored and distracted, and just how desperate they are to be rescued from the tedium of their lives. So, yeah, I come from an entertainment background. My parents were both performers, although my father made his living primarily as behind the scenes in
I know, but you said once that he studied with Paul Hindemith. I don't know why that has grabbed me forever.
yeah, he was a composer, and he studied with Paul Hindemith, and and he did some performing, but he was
But he was creative in that
oh
area.
yeah,
And
very much in the arts. And my mother was an actress and singer,
and who
and
was your mother?
Charlotte Ray,
Haha.
who,
Yes.
who
Okay.
she was on Broadway for much of my childhood. We were in New York. She was on Broadway, and then she, when I was in my early teens, she moved us to LA because there were more opportunities for her in television, and
And we
she had
all know
a
her kind of
successful
as
run.
the dorm mother of.
Right, of in on the facts of life.
That may seem funny to you and not worth much, but the truth is about these entertainers who are part of our lives. They are in our living rooms and our bedrooms and our kitchens every week, unless we see reruns. And so they're so much a part of our family.
Oh, absolutely. I've since my mother's passing, I've kind of I've become the only connection that some people have to her, or the best connection. And so I've heard from a lot of people who, had, I mean, one man said that she and the show saved his life.
Oh my goodness, say how.
Yeah. There was they did an episode of the show about where one of the girls would not was it was like prom night, and there was some drinking and driving, and one of the girls made a decision like not to get in a car.
Uh-huh.
I think it was, I forget, I could actually, but it was something about like just being safe, drinking and driving on prom night. Anyway, this man said that he made a decision not to get in a car on prom night
Hmm.
with some people who'd been drinking because of seeing that episode. And he
Excellent.
said, and he said tragically, the people who did get in that car all
Uh,
died in a car accident.
yeah.
He knows he would have been in that car if not for the show. So, that there are these deep connections that people have
Now
to what
talk
they,
about your brother for a minute, because as I recall, you had a brother who needed you. And I think, didn't that have something to do with your knowing that you should slip into teaching, or you remind me?
yeah. Well, my brother he was my first teacher. He taught me patience.
Oh, he did. Okay,
He
good.
taught me patience
Wow.
because he was profoundly autistic and schizophrenic, and in
Mhm.
order for me to play with him, it was excruciating. He was very difficult to connect with. He was very hard to reach. He was sort of in his own world, and so for me, at a young age, I think I understood that even though I was the younger brother by 3.5 years, that I had to take care of him, and that I had to guide him and teach him things. And, and it wasn't easy to teach him. He was, sometimes he just didn't understand things, or he would, start
I'm sure
staring at
he was
things.
elsewhere.
and yeah, and so I owe my teaching talent to him
Okay,
because
let's talk about
I've
teaching talent. What do you offer? Okay, so I'm gonna get, well, first of all, tell us what you teach.
I'm a high school English teacher.
Oh, doing
Well,
God's work.
I've I've taught many other things over the years, but that's my subject. That's my
Now,
specialty.
what is it that you know that some teachers don't about good teaching?
Mm. Well, yeah, experience has taught me a lot, and probably the most important thing is that every student wants to learn.
Okay.
This is because by high school they don't act like it. They
Because
they give us they give us a kind of aloofness. They give us a disinterest, uh, but they all want to learn.
how do you
They
know that?
also they also all want to they also all want to have a connection with adults.
Okay.
They if you're as a parent, I've experienced, you know, teenagers kind of turning away and not wanting to talk to you, and that happens a lot
And
with parents.
what is the value in that for your teenagers turning away?
Yeah, it's their way of becoming independent. They need to strike out on their own. They need to not just be their parents' children. But
Can you foster independence more as a teacher?
yes, yes, because
Wow.
it's not they when they connect with a teacher, it doesn't feel like they're still kid, it doesn't feel like they're kids. It feels like it can feel if you give them that space, it can feel like they're more adult talking to an adult. They really like that. They really appreciate that. And they really appreciate when we don't talk down to them, when we,
Oh,
you
yes.
know, when we treat them as an equal. And
Right.
even when we have to be, stern and, and help them be more disciplined, there's
Yeah.
a way to do it where it's not demeaning, where it's not like,
Talk about how you do that. How do you do that? How do you be stern without diminishing a person?
yeah, yeah.
How do you,
Um,
how do you, I once got an exercise for something and it was, how do you say no without using the word no?
right.
How do you do what you do without using any words that will push people away or make a student feel less than valuable?
Yeah. It's kind of similar to the way you talk to a parent about their kid. It's that
Oh,
you lead with the positive, and you let them know how great they are and how you expect more of them than what they're giving, and how you
so that segue is important though, because when you're talking about the positive, there's a but coming. How do you deal with that? How do you get from the positive to the thing that
yeah,
help without saying positive, wonderful, great, but
yeah. Well, maybe it's not a but, maybe it's an and I know you want to be better. I
yeah.
know you can be better. I know you want to be better. I know you expect it of yourself. I mean, your parents expect it of you, but so do you. You want to succeed. You want to, like, come on, you could do better. And that's it. It's like, it's so simple. It's not, there's no put down. There's no condemnation in it. The other thing is I always remind students that, like, whatever you did, however, you know, disruptive or however your negative behaviors are, you're probably not worse than I was.
Oh, that's really nice. Yes.
Like I was, and by the way, my generation was worse than your generation, and
Oh,
that's documented. Like that's not even disputable. And so, but it's up, my job is to kind of help you be better, but I'm not there's no judgment in it.
okay.
Like
So
I don't
you
know
make
that
that clear.
you're not a bad person. You're a teenager, and it's hard being a teenager, and
And so,
and we're on the same team.
and
We have the same goal.
for boys, I've noticed it's much harder to be a teenager. The difference between boyhood and manhood is so jarring. Not true. It's not so jarring for girls. I mean, we're
Mm.
born almost women. And the physical and the emotional and that lizard brain for the boys is just, but let me ask you something. At this stage in your life, you have, correct me if I'm wrong, kind of taken it upon yourself to let other teachers know
Yeah,
some secrets that you know. Can we have
yeah.
the secrets?
I mean, they're not. Yeah, they're
Let's have
certainly wi
let's have a
wisdom.
couple.
Yeah, I've actually been mentoring new and struggling teachers for about 20 years.
Okay.
And I've noticed the change in them. I've noticed a change in the conditions,
Well, what do
life
you tell them?
conditions and kids. Um, you know, so again, start with all kids want to learn. It really, really helps. It really helps you survive and get good if you love kids.
Okay.
I can't tell you how to do that other than to me it's a given.
Well,
Like,
that should be something that is taken into account when people go to school to get teaching credentials or schools
hmm?
hire.
Oh yeah, like it might not be for you if you don't, but I think you can develop that love. I don't think it's I don't think it's a closed system by
Yeah.
any means. But and if you think about it, even if you don't naturally just have an affection and affinity for kids when they're at their worst, that was my what made it easier for me was, I love my students, especially when they're at their worst.
Okay.
Not in spite of being at their worst. Like, it's not like I break down and go like, when they're standing on a table, saying like, "Oh, you're great, I love you."
Well,
But
being a
but I do feel like, wow, this is great. I have to deal with it. I've got to help them, but this is who they are at
okay,
this moment.
I have a question in that line. I used to be a probation officer.
Hmm?
Loving kids at their worst, when they are at their worst, that is information about what's wrong.
Hmm.
It is information about what they're objecting to in life. So can you kind of approach that? Like, you're doing this and that. What's making what are you angry at? What are you most angry at in life? That kind of
Yeah.
thing. I mean, do you ever have a chance to talk
Oh,
to?
absolutely. Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. There are several. Yeah, there are a bunch of opportunities, and certainly when they're having a meltdown, when they're like at their worst, then yeah, it's an opportunity to find out like what is going on. And sometimes it surprises,
Yeah.
sometimes it surprises you.
What's the biggest surprise you ever got? So you see, I think when they're at their worst, they're for teenagers, they're thinking.
Yeah, they're
So
thinking that.
what's the biggest surprise you ever got for a student who was at his or her worst, and you found out what?
Hmm. I mean,
There are all kinds of things, by the way.
yeah,
It's
I mean,
no, I mean,
I've had students you know,
right.
who had just had a parent deported and
What?
who had just had a parent deported. I had students
That's
in
a
my
whole new thing
classroom
today.
who
Yes,
just lost a parent,
right.
you know, because of their immigration status. I've had students who, had a parent die but also, I mean, I had a student tell me, that his uncle had been shot and he was, really upset and everything. And I knew his sister and everyone in the family was upset, and then like I followed up with him, like, hey, how are you doing? What's happening with your family? And I found out that what was actually bothering him more was he's having girl problems like that. You
Yes.
know, the uncle was upsetting, but what was really getting at him was he'd had a breakup
Uh-huh.
and he was frustrated. He was still like hung up on this girl and he wanted to get her back and you know and and he really needed like advice. Like he was like I couldn't get after that. I couldn't get rid of him. Like he wanted to spend the whole day sitting next to my desk. Like, okay, tell me more. Help me understand women. And
Okay.
I said, well, I don't know. You live with three of them. You had two
But you're,
sisters
but
and a
you're a
mom,
good
but
man.
and somehow, and I don't know if as a husband and father of girls, how successful I've been, but I've learned enough from my mistakes that I can teach this boy, so I give him some insight
I
about,
think
you
people
know,
need to know that their mistakes can be their greatest teachers.
yes, 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 absolutely. Yeah. On my wall, I have a Samuel Beckett quote. Ever tried, ever failed, no matter, try again, fail better.
Uh-huh.
And one of the things I would change if I was in charge of my school district is when a student doesn't pass a class, the word fail appears on their report card. Not even just the letter F, just the whole
Yeah,
word
yeah.
fail. And I would get rid of that.
Good for
I would put something else like, lack of effort, but I
uh-huh.
wouldn't put fail because
Yeah.
failing is part of success. I've said to students, like, you didn't fail my class.
Hmm.
You did not fail. If you had failed, you wouldn't have an F because you would have failed. If you'd failed over and over again, you'd have a passing grade. You did not make an effort. You did not attempt the class
Let me ask you
sufficiently.
something. Can we take kind of an abrupt turn here?
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
we're now living, and I want to know you as a teacher, AI.
yeah,
Is this something that's play? I mean, my personal view at this point is it should be taught so people can use it well. This is almost if you don't allow it, seems
Mhm.
to me,
I
it's
mean,
it's like
yeah,
not letting your children use watches because the sundial used to work just fine, and we
yeah,
don't. What do you
well,
say?
yeah. And I actually, there's a whole chapter
Oh,
uh,
good. Tell us
in
about it
in
because
my
that's
book
going to be plaguing.
about it because, yeah, every teacher, especially language arts, are, you know, really having to confront this new reality. So I do, I do, obviously AI is going to be part of our lives, and
Yeah.
many jobs are now, well, some jobs are going to be replaced by it, but other jobs are going to require people to be able to use it effectively and successfully.
How would you like your students to use it?
I would, I mean, I would probably just be giving you the tip of the iceberg, but certainly they can, use it, use it to read their work, edit it, offer feedback. For research, it's a great tool.
Yeah.
Where the line should be drawn is if you're having AI write for you, which it can do,
That's the question.
and yeah, and AI can write. By the way, it's not really artificial intelligence exactly. It's more of like it's a massive lightning fast
Yeah.
form of theft. I mean, it's taking everything, it's scraping the internet for everything that's been written, that's been posted on the internet, including, op-eds I've written for USA Today and other newspapers. Like, it's taking our work and it's regurgitating it in a way, well, that to be fair, that's what we all read, and then it influences our writing. This is a little different because it's not a human brain. It has no soul. I mean, people are trying to say, oh,
Oh,
it's
it's
sentient,
soon. But anyway, go ahead.
but it has never experienced. It has no physical touch. I mean, if you were to connect it somehow with a human body, then perhaps that would be possible. But as I say to kids, like, you're not going to have a voice. You're not going to develop
Hmm.
your voice in writing. Your voice in writing is you. That's part of who you are. I had a student. Let me tell you, I had a student about 15 years ago. She came to our school. She's been kicked out of another school for fighting, and came to our school. And she was very smart. I noticed it right away, and I I ended up nominating her for a scholarship
Mhm.
that is given to 10th graders in LA. They don't get the money till they go to college, but it was Warren Christopher, the Secretary of State, former Secretary of State under Bill Clinton, and he actually, when he was in high school, he almost dropped out because his father died and he had to work and so on. And somebody got him a scholarship, and that's why he went to college, and that's how he had this great career. So he created this scholarship to be given to sophomores. Anyway, I helped her write. She had to write an essay about who she was, and she had a harrowing story of of death and dysfunction and abuse and had a really rough time in high school, but was a really truly remarkable person. And now she's actually in getting her MBA at Berkeley, but she's been all over the world. She's had several careers already, and now she's going to venture capital. But she's said to me, and she said publicly that her success began when she told her story,
Of
when I
course.
helped her tell her story,
Okay.
because she didn't know she had a story, and she didn't know she had no perspective on her life, and it began to give her perspective on her life. And so for me, if AI is writing for you, you're losing that. You're
Oh,
not
I
if you're
agree.
not articulating who you are, you're losing something.
Well, let me ask you something on that because I feel with the issue of plagiarism, sometimes people will say, well, I want to write a love letter, and they steal something from Thomas Hardy. And nothing wrong with saying, Thomas Hardy said it best, and I'm going to tell you what that is. Just don't pretend it's yours. Is
Mhm.
there a way that a student can say, I started with AI with this, and I found what expresses best for me, and here it is. And then you can take it from there and kind of gradually give that student the strengths to do it using AI as the training wheels.
Yeah, well, I'm pretty sure because I run everything that my students turn into me gets run
Okay,
through an AI detector,
right.
and I, I'm pretty sure that some of them use AI and then go through it and or like they use AI in the process, but they're not just letting
Okay, so
it
you
write
can
for them.
you can encourage that.
Yeah, if that's what they want to do, I don't think there's any way we can stop them. And I'm not, the only my my point to students is like, you could do all that and get away with it, but you're losing something. Because writing makes you like that student, that woman who, whose success started out when she told her story. Uh, but in addition to that, I think writing makes us smarter. I
Oh, I
think
agree.
that was my experience. I was not a good student. I was not really using my full intelligence. And through writing, I became much smarter.
Okay, so you're touching on something else that you didn't mention, and I know it's there with you. What students want to learn and they want this, everybody wants to feel valuable. No?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, everyone wants to be
And
valued.
and the truth is everybody is in some way. Let me ask you something too, because you know me and love letters, and I know you can write them. Did it ever occur to you, or have you ever written an appreciation personally to any of your, it makes me want to write one to this woman who's been such a success. Have you ever written to your students?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Have you ever
Um,
written this one?
I mean, usually it's in response to
Yes.
them. Yeah, I get a lot of appreciation letters, and I like to respond to them, or emails. A lot of them are emails
The
now.
only thing about email, I use it, I'm obsessed with all fine, the whole world of tech, but it changes every 4 years. Remember those little square things, that little cards that you would put your heart and soul into it and think you have it forever.
Yeah.
Flush. Things change so that what you do on um, your machine right now, whatever program you use, is going to be
Yeah.
irrelevant in 8 years and 10 years. So writing, I have letters, I have copies of letters that were written in the late 1800s, and they are
Wow.
legible as they were the day they were written. So when
Yeah.
it comes to storage of your most important recognitions, feelings, anything, handwriting is
Yeah.
also in good
Yeah.
place.
No, these are all, this is all,
Oh, good.
this
Okay.
is just like some of what I've received over the
Okay.
years from students.
So this is a good
Um,
lesson for students too. Write to
and
your
they're
story.
fun. They're fun to read. I mean, when you read something from somebody who's like 40 years old now and, successful, has a family, and it's like an apology for something
Oh,
you
nice.
didn't even think was that bad, but like, they're you just see them processing like, I want to be better, I want to be better, but I'm sorry, these apologies or appreciations
Yeah.
or
An apology is a wonderful form of a love letter. Yes. Tell us the name
or
of your book because we don't have too much time
yeah.
left.
It's called A Lasting Impact.
Mhm.
Um, Wisdom and insight for brave teachers. And it's it's really is like my love letter
Yes.
to 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 students, because the next generation needs good teachers, and there aren't there's a pretty acute teacher shortage right now,
Yes.
and I know a lot of young teachers are not happy, and I don't blame them at all.
Mhm.
I I have no contempt for anyone who quits after a year or two or a month.
That's sad though.
Working conditions can be awful.
Right.
And the pressures that are put on teachers, which are the wrong pressures, there are pressures about test scores
Hmm.
and other things that should not be the priorities. And a lot of people just get frustrated and fed up. And then the kids are they're going through a lot. They're traumatized in many ways. The kids who are in high school now were in late elementary school when COVID hit, and they
Uh-huh.
were isolated at crucial times in their social and intellectual development. And so we're having to deal with that, plus just everything going on in the world, and social media and the pressures of that
Well,
are on
when
kids.
you talk about tip of the iceberg, I mean, every one of those comments just has so much to say. But I want to thank you for doing this with me.
Well,
And
thank you.
people can order your book or go into a bookstore and request it. It's
Well, yeah, I don't know how much, I mean, I don't know how much distribution it gets in the bookstores, just because it's very specific for teachers. It's a book.
people can go online with the title.
Go on. You can order through the publisher Routledge or through Amazon or Barnes and Noble, any place that sells books.
And people can also just put your name, Lawrence Strauss, in, and of course that would lead to, okay,
Larry Strauss.
very,
And oh, I see. I have my work
I
computer.
didn't
It's
know it.
got my legal name.
Yeah, I know
Larry
it's Larry.
Strauss, A Lasting Impact. Yeah, and it'll come up. It you know, I it's tough. It's the first few years of teaching are tough. I hope this book can make it a little easier on some people.
Thank you. I hope it does well, and I hope people get to benefit from your experience. So I'm going to tell you goodbye for
All
now.
right. Thank you.
Thank
Goodbye.
you. This
Great
is
talking.
always interesting